Hello, my friends. I'm going to focus on a series of riots that have been going on for the last two nights in a town in Northern Ireland. That's actually part of the United Kingdom. It's called Northern Ireland, and there are Irish people there. A couple of Roma gypsies are accused of raping an Irish girl, and that has set off mass protests, some of which have become violent. I'll tell you what's going on. I'll show you what's going on. I'll interview someone on the street there, and I'll tell you my thoughts about it. That's next. But first, let me invite you to become a subscriber to Rebel News Plus. It's the video version of this podcast. You absolutely need to see the videos I'm going to show you tonight to understand the gravity of what's going on in Northern Ireland. Go to rebelnewsplus.com, click subscribe. It's $8 a month. You get all the video version of this podcast, plus the satisfaction of helping Rebel News stay strong. Oh yeah, one more thing.
Feel like Ottawa's got its boot on Alberta's neck? Well, it's time to push back. Join us for Rebel News Live, Saturday, June 14th at the Red Deer Curling Center. Spend the day with Ezra Levant, me, Sheila Gunn-Reid, and a powerhouse lineup of freedom fighters, political thinkers, and grassroots leaders. We're talking energy, free speech, and especially independence, and how the West can finally stop getting screwed. This isn't just a conference, it's a rallying cry. Tickets are going fast. Get yours now at donegettingscrewed.com. Stand up, speak out, be there.
Tonight, Northern Ireland riots against migrants who allegedly raped a teenage girl. It's June 10th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Shame on you, you censorious thug.
I was in Ireland on Saturday, flew home right away, but as I was making my way home, in Northern Ireland, which is actually part of the United Kingdom, but contiguous with the Republic of Ireland, in Ballymena, a town of about 30,000 people, there was allegedly a rape. And the rapists were migrant men by allegation. They appeared in court and they had translators to the Romanian language. They were allegedly Roma gypsies. Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland are obviously culturally similar in many important ways. There are some differences, particularly between Protestants and Catholics, but I don't think those are important here other than in one way, which is that all Irish have been closer to violence, I put it to you, than any Canadian has. Ireland rebelled against the United Kingdom about 100 years ago. That was a full-fledged rebellion. And then there were, quote, troubles in the north until very recently. Those troubles included bombings, shootings, kidnappings. I'm not here to comment on those, but you can sense that rebel spirit living on. And whereas in Canada, it would be unthinkable to call for political violence, I've heard it a couple of times in my visits to Ireland itself, that violence is not wanted, but it is a last resort. You don't hear it in a blatant way, but there is a whiff of it from time to time. And you see that young people are familiar with throwing rocks and bottles. They wear balaclavas or a face mask. It's not a COVID thing, I can assure you. I saw a bit of that when I was in Dublin. There's this low-income area called Coolock that the police were insistent they were going to put 500 military-aged migrant men in an old paint factory. And the locals wouldn't have it. The most interesting thing I saw is that there were teenage boys who were there covering their faces, hurling projectiles at police while their mums and dads were there with approval. Like, it's the kind of place where fighting is part of the family tradition. And I'm not painting with a broad brush. I'm just saying that is something you don't typically see in a place like Canada. And the police are pretty muscular too. Just yesterday, I think it was, the police in Northern Ireland were showing off their new water cannon truck. I can't remember the last time such a riot control truck was used in Canada. Maybe it would have been during the trucker convoy, and that in itself was the first time in a generation. I think in Ireland, especially in Northern Ireland, they plan to use it. And obviously, they plan to use it against the ethnic Irish themselves. So back to what happened on Saturday night. there's been a series of rapes in this small town. And like I say, there are two minors who were charged with sexual assault who are Roma gypsies. And I've seen pictures of one of the men on social media, but I can't confirm it, so I don't want to show the picture of one of the accused without knowing for sure that he is the guy that it's claimed he is. But there's a taunting to it, as is sometimes the case with gypsy migrants. And it was so shocking, the rape of a young girl in this small, close-knit town that was so conspicuously done by migrants, that more than 2,500 local people in a city or in a town just 10 times that size took to the streets, absolutely overwhelming the streets of this small town. Very solemn, very sober, very angry, but not a wild anger, a determined anger. Here, let me just show you some videos for a bit. I was riveted by this, and I could feel the emotion coming through the camera.
She was taken into a house and brutally sexually assaulted on Saturday evening.
So she was taken into the house, sexually assaulted.
There was a mattress in the garage.
There was a mattress.
Yeah.
Do you know, was there more than one man? Three men, right. So so you're here. Fair play to you. I can't believe the crowd has come out to support these guys, you know what I mean? It's absolutely immense. There's no flags, there's no shouting, it's totally respect. It's totally respectful.
It's not about, it's a child that's been hurt, and
it's three now. It's three incidents.
2 weeks ago it was brushed under the carpet. I wasn't aware of the one before that.
Yeah.
But the child 2 weeks ago was the same age, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Right,
absolutely disgusting. I don't want my kids going anywhere.
Now, this happened quite quickly, and local police were obviously quickly overwhelmed. It took some time for the heavier riot police to come into town with their big trucks, but not before some of the youths, with their faces covered, they know what they're doing in Northern Ireland, sacked the apartments that they believed were the homes for these gypsies, sacked them, burned them, overturned vehicles. It was very interesting to watch what was going on. And I'm not talking about the violence itself. I'm talking about the mass march on the street. Can you tell me the last time in Canada that there was hundreds, let alone thousands of people spontaneously marching in the street about anything, let alone the rape of a young girl? There was a solidarity there that I don't think you find in Canada. Maybe I'm not remembering something. And I think it goes to Ireland's nature. By far most Irish have been there for centuries. They're part of a family. They're part of a clan, you could say. They're united, I suppose, by religion too. There is that great divide between Catholics and Protestants, but you belong there in Ireland. Now, maybe that's suffocating sometimes. Maybe you want to break out of your rut and be someone who you could be but aren't. I suppose that's one of the things about a very intense family, is that you have to play a role. But one of the benefits of being in such an intense family as an ethnically homogenous country is that sense of belonging. 2,500 people marched in grave solidarity with these violated girls against an outside threat. And it reminded me of the last time I saw such a thing, and it was in this case in Sunderland, near Newcastle in the United Kingdom, when a young mother was raped, again by migrant men, and the whole community in Sunderland went out for a march. And actually, we participated with Tommy Robinson. More than 100,000 people signed a petition in support of Chelsea. Let me just show you a little bit about what that was like in this very poor, ethnically homogenous town called Sunderland that had been invaded by foreign migrants foisted upon them.
We want to hand you here, there's over 50,000 signatures demanding justice and action against Muslim men who are raping girls in the city. And again, that's the start.
There's an ethnic homogeneity in Sunderland and in Ballymena. In the north of Ireland, split between Protestant and Catholic, I suppose, but those differences between Protestant and Catholic, I would imagine they pale next to the common revulsion at the rape culture that has been brought into Ireland and into the UK. I think that is the reason why Ireland is reacting to mass immigration and Canada is quite passive about it. I felt it when I was in Dundrum. Remember that tiny town of, 180 or 200 people where the government suddenly said, surprise, you're taking 240 military age migrant men. I remember when I was in that town, I was only in that town for a few hours, and we stopped into basically a gas station convenience store, and we stopped and we took some what we call B-roll, some background footage, and anyone who came by stopped and said, who are you, what you do? And not in an attacky way, and not so much in, as an attack, and not so much in a gossipy way, but just we're all looking out for each other, and we want to make sure that the stranger in Dundrum is not here for bad reasons, because there were some coming. And they were only appeased when we gave them the name of the matriarch of Dundrum who had welcomed us in. That's something about small towns. And I suppose you have that in small town Canada. I suppose you have that in some town in Saskatchewan, and some town in Alberta, some town in Ontario, where people all know each other and where people have been there for decades, and someone who's only been there 10 years is still called a newcomer. There's something wonderful about living in a community like that. And so when that town is suddenly told they're going to be a minority in their own place, they don't like it much. Here's what Dundrum said.
My name is Fiona Kennedy. I'm a very ordinary mother. I live here locally in Dundrum, and I'm here with a group of people. We're the most ordinary people that you could possibly meet. We find ourselves in an extraordinary situation, and really we're standing to protect our hotel, our beautiful hotel here, Dundrum House Hotel, our golf club, and our community.
Now, I had never heard of Dundrum until yesterday. I looked it up, and it only has about 200 people. And I understand that this facility, this gorgeous, beautiful hotel and country club, could theoretically sleep up to 500 people. What do you know about the contract that the owner of this facility has to house asylum seekers and refugees? What information do you have?
Well, unfortunately, we've very little information. Now, we have submitted a request for information under the Freedom of Information Act. I'm not sure if the time on that is up, but we've had no information back yet. We would like to get sight of the contract, but nobody's forthcoming on that.
And has the owner of the hotel been communicative at all?
Not in the slightest, no. He hasn't engaged with us at all.
And what is the government entity that's involved? Is it just the national government, or are there any local governments involved?
Well, really, this has been driven by national government, the Department of Integration, and we do have local government here in Tipperary in Ireland as well. We have some local councillors who are working on our behalf, working with us. We have one local Tipperary TD member of our Parliament, just to translate it to Canadian, and here is actually the owner is just about to pass. The owner is just passing.
I'll have to go and talk to him. What's his name?
His name is Jeff Leo. Yeah.
And I understand he's from away, is that right?
Yeah, I understand he's American. I've actually never met Jeff. So that's my first time seeing him. That hasn't been a photograph.
He certainly sped by.
Yeah,
He hasn't had any community town halls. Has he sat down with the media at all?
Not to my knowledge, he hasn't.
I'm guessing you would know.
We would know. And he hasn't engaged with the community at all. We've had 2 public meetings, both very heavily attended. And
I saw that solidarity at the big march in Cork on Saturday. And I think, how come we don't have those marches in Canada? I'd say there was about 4,000 marchers in Cork, a city of 250,000. There'd been 50,000 in Dublin, a city with, 1.5 million in the whole area. I doubt you would get 20 people marching in Toronto. We don't have the same community in our big cities. We're becoming a country of strangers. We brought in so many migrants so quickly that those bonds they're not there. Do you know who your neighbors are? Maybe if you live in a small town or in the country you do, but if you live in Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal or Ottawa or even parts of Calgary or Edmonton, I bet you don't know who's in your neighborhood anymore. We're a country of strangers. We've been desensitized to people who are not only different from us and far away from us, but they've brought different cultures along with them. Now, our country, before it was multicultural, had madness and had drunkenness and had crime. But I think the difference is now that we've been atomized. I think COVID helped cut the bonds of society amongst us as well. We were cut off from people of every background. We were told to live through our computer screens and our phones. COVID was the dream for maybe many large corporations. It benefited banks and cell phone companies and landlords and DoorDash that works on migrant labor. But I think in some parts of the world, they still have community. That's a high trust society. But look at the low trust or something. Look at this. Yeah, that's newcomers partying in a graveyard in Ireland. There's certain parts of a cultural identity that are evident and some that are sort of like the 6th, 7th of an iceberg that's underwater. You don't really see them all the time until suddenly they're there. Look, I am against the violence that is happening in this small town in Northern Ireland. But what happens when the state fails to protect its own people? Or let me phrase that in a different way. I'm against violence in Northern Ireland, but is the state against it? And if so, why has it brought into Northern Ireland people who are so evidently not a fit? There was racism in Ballymena, and it was allegedly these foreign migrants who chose to rape an Irish national. They didn't rape someone else who was Roma. The rape was racist, as most rapes in the UK are. Ask Majid Nawaz about the preponderance of Pakistani Muslim men committing rapes in the United Kingdom.
It is an absolute disgrace. People have cared for their reputations over the safety of children in this country being raped and drugged and passed around like meat because of the bigotry and the prejudices of these Pakistani Muslim men who are looking down on these children as less than, as inferior, as some form of infidel that doesn't deserve honour or dignity. And I address you now here, oh woke left wing. You talk about believing the victim. Look it up, go to your smartphone and Google Ella Hill. She writes a piece in The Independent in which she describes the religious extremist terminology her abusers were using as they were sexually exploiting her as a child, in which she talks of how they called her an infidel and how they abused her race and her lack of Islamic faith and justified treating her in this way because they viewed her as less than because they believed themselves to be Muslim supremacists. Don't tell me that their Muslim identity had nothing to do with this. I have lived and breathed this community all of my life. I can guarantee you that it's not the cause, but a factor in the way in which these girls was treated was the culture of these men, and as part of that culture is their religious attitude towards non-Muslims. And that is the reason that you see almost exclusively that they are men like me, Pakistani, British, Muslim. Most of them, all of them Muslims, almost all Pakistani Muslims. And the victims, almost all underaged white girls.
So that's what started happening yesterday, and I was riveted by it on social media. But listen to what the police had to say today.
Last night saw significant sustained disorder in Ballymena. This violence was clearly racially motivated and targeted at our minority ethnic community and the police. It was racist thuggery, pure and simply, and any attempt to justify or explain it as something else is misplaced.
That's Assistant Chief Constable Ryan Henderson of the Police Service of Northern Ireland. He's doing the Southport playbook. If you don't know what Southport is, it happened last year in the United Kingdom when a convert to Islam named Axel Rudakabana went into a Taylor Swift themed girls' party with a knife and just stabbed and stabbed and stabbed, murdering several of the girls. It set off riots, it set off outrage against migrants. Ruda Cubana was arrested. He's since gone on to commit more violence in prison. But what was fascinating is the whole thing was blamed not on the UK's failure to vet migrants and not on radical Islam, but it was blamed on the far right. And Keir Starmer set up 24-hour-a-day courts that prosecuted not necessarily people who were violent, but people who said mean things on social media. And that's just what happened again in Northern Ireland. They're running that same playbook. They just called the grieving community racist. And I'm sure they're going to lock up anyone who talks about it. Now, earlier today, we spoke with Richard Inman, who's a friend of mine who I met in the United Kingdom. And we had a good talk about it, and he gave us a briefing on what happened last night, and I'll play that for you in a moment. But after that interview, it was clear that things were getting bigger and more intense. We have more footage for you since we've spoken with Richard. Will the United Kingdom and Ireland continue this mad experiment of bringing in people who are culturally not a fit, legally not a fit, often who don't speak English, often in some cases hate the United Kingdom? I doubted when the people of Coolock said they could stop the plantation in their neighborhood. I was startled by the kids throwing things, but I think the fighting Irish spirit might well succeed despite their government. And for anyone who abhors violence, including riots and arson and the kind of things that have happened in this Northern Ireland town, it is not ideal that violence is the way that this will be stopped. But when the government is at war with its own people, when the government refuses to stop the floodgates of foreigners, unvetted foreigners, when the government literally escorts in boats across the English Channel coming to the UK with illegal immigrants, when nothing seems to stop it and the government is deaf to the pleas of the people, what would you expect is going to happen? Stay with us. Richard Inman is next. Well, as you know, I was in Cork, Ireland on Saturday for a huge rally against mass immigration and fake refugees. Well, that's in Ireland proper, the Republic of Ireland. But Northern Ireland, which is on the same Emerald Isle, it's part of the United Kingdom, though, then that same night, a shocking thing happened. Allegedly, there was rape by migrants of young age kids. They weren't even women, they were girls. And the news spread like wildfire. And hundreds of locals in a town called Ballymena marched towards the downtown apartment where the migrants were and ransacked the place. That's what I could glean from social media. But I'm fortunate enough to have a friend in Ballymena right now. His name is Richard Inman. I've got to know him through my friendship with Tommy Robinson. And he is a reporter for Urban Scoop. He is standing right in the heart of Ballymena, and he joins us now. Richard, thanks so much for taking the time to be there for us on the ground.
Well, thank you, Ezra, for showing an interest in this, because to put this in context, Ezra, Ballymena is a small market town. I don't know, if you thought something the size of Wainwright or Jasper in Canada, that's the sort of size of it. It's a very, very small town. And for this level of disturbance to happen in a town like this is very, very rare. But I just want to correct something that the people are saying on social media. What actually happened was it was a very dignified and peaceful protest about 7:30 last night in the centre of Ballymena. There was about 2,500 people there. That's from a population of 30,000. So it's a massive turnout at the event. And basically, it was a very strange sense of somberness and mourning for what had happened, or what allegedly has happened to this young child. And That event went off completely peaceful. As I was leaving the event with my cameraman last night, because I filmed all the goings on at the demonstration, which was magnificent and peaceful and respectful. After that, the police blocked roads, actually stopped us being able to get out of Ballymena. We ended up kind of trapped in the town. So we parked up on the side of the road, on the sidewalk, and got out of the car and walked to where I'm standing now. And when myself and my friend got here with the camera equipment, there was a group of probably 20 to 30 masked young men deliberately targeting 2 or 3 houses in this street. And again, this is just what I could gather from the crowd. The houses were allegedly occupied by some of the suspects. Okay, so this wasn't like randomly just attacking migrants' houses, from what I can gather. And again, I'm only going on what I was told by the people on the ground. But we ended up, and I'll send you the footage actually, Ezra, we ended up sandwiched between the police and the lads that were completely beside themselves with rage over what had happened to one of the children of this town. And we were kind of in the middle of it. So we could really see exactly what was going on. The interesting thing was the police didn't actually intervene. The police were standing about 50 yards away from the disturbances, and they did nothing until some heavy-handed riot cops came in from a city a few, about 20 miles away. So there was a long time in this town last night where it was ungoverned space. And I think what I got from that was that this is what happens when government completely collapses in terms of immigration, in terms of who they're allowing into the country. And you have a situation where people are feeling threatened, people are feeling frightened. And again, I'm not condoning lawlessness. I'm not condoning anybody doing any criminality. But when people are angry and people are feeling ignored and people are feeling like they're being marginalized, things explode. And that's really what happened on the streets of Ballymena last night.
That's incredible. Now, let me just pause for a second and make sure I have my facts straight. I read that there was one girl on Saturday night. Then I read there were 2. And then I read there was actually a 3rd case of rape several weeks ago. Can you clarify for me how many women were raped, and were they children? Were they teenagers? Help me out. I just want to be as accurate as possible.
So, and again, Ezra, obviously with your legal mind and me being in the UK, I've got to be extremely careful about what I say, because what we don't want to do is collapse any of the cases that are ongoing. And there have been, as far as I know, two people charged. So we can't speak specifically about the details of the specific cases. But the allegation is that in the last fortnight, there have been 2 serious sexual assaults on children. Now, that's the allegation. Again, we've got to say it's an allegation because of the British legal system, because as we know from our friend Tommy, you can get yourself into all sorts of hot water. But what we don't want to do is collapse any case that may be upcoming. So what we're saying is these are allegations. We've got to be very clear on that. But yes, 2 allegations of very, very serious sexual assault, allegedly by Roma gypsies in Ballymena in the past fortnight. And Ezra, I have never seen rage. Well, I have, but I haven't seen rage like that for a long time. I've lived in Northern Ireland since the 1980s. I came here with the military. And the rage I saw last night was like something we would have seen in the 1980s. It's as simple as that. I haven't seen that for a very, very long time. And I think a lot of people are talking about civil unrest and civil disturbances. What people don't realise about Northern Ireland and the Northern Irish people, it's not about race. In fact, the actual one of the alleged victims, and again we're saying alleged not because for any other reason than legal reasons. One of the alleged victims, her father is a black man who actually stood with amazing dignity at that protest last night and spoke at the protest literally hours after this alleged incident took place. Okay, so this is not a racially motivated attack on innocent people. That's not what's been going on here. This has been an explosion of rage, and it would have been exactly the same if it had been a gang of white guys had been allegedly doing what they were doing. The rage would be exactly the same, because that's what Northern Ireland people like. They stand up for their women. They take a stand for their women, but whether they're children or whether it's their wives, they will always stand up for their women. And I think, that's what people have got to take from this. Not the fact that there was any racial element, because I don't believe there was. I believe it was purely rage at what had happened to those two girls yesterday.
Wow, that's very interesting that you say that, and thank you for that on-the-ground reporting, that it was a black father whose daughter was allegedly raped, and I'll say allegedly, obviously, because a senior police officer today had a briefing and painted the protest as racist. I don't know if you saw that, Richard. It was the most outrageous defamation of grieving mums and dads and neighbors and brothers and cousins. I saw a lot of snippets on social media, and you're right, the tone was rage, hurt, a feeling of being violated, a feeling of being abandoned by the government. This is what I sensed through the video. And if you're saying that a father himself, who happens to be black, was grieving there, and then today this cop smeared those protesters as racist, that is like throwing kerosene on the fire. That's outrageous. Are you aware of that statement by the senior policeman?
Yes,
Last night saw significant sustained disorder in Ballymena. This violence was clearly racially motivated and targeted at our minority ethnic community and the police. It was racist thuggery, pure and simply, and any attempt to justify or explain it as something else is misplaced.
I was aware of that, Ezra, and I totally agree with it. It's absolutely outrageous. And Ezra, you know as well as I do, we have dealt with this. We have dealt with these slurs. You've dealt with it. I've dealt with it. Tommy's dealt with it for the past 10 to 15 years. Every time we highlight a problem, whether it's with radical Islam, whether it's with grooming gangs, whether it's with criminality or people smuggling or money laundering, whatever it is, every time we raise these problems and say, well, actually, there might be a common denominator here. Straight away, we're smeared as racist and xenophobic. And do you know what? I think we're all bored with it now. They can call us what we want. We know what we are. We know what we believe. We're very open, genuine people in Northern Ireland. And those smears are not what some people do.
Wow. You know, one of the things that I can see the United Kingdom moving towards more candor about grooming gangs, rape gangs, and this problem, partly because of our friend Tommy Robinson blowing the lid off it, and that has caused other parts of society to move. Even Parliament's talking about it. There's a inquiry into grooming gangs by an MP, Rupert Lowe. So people are talking about it more and more. And the nation, and this is just my view as an outsider, Richard, it looks like Brits are slowly moving away from their fear of speaking plainly. If you look at the Rotherham report into the mass rapes there, again and again, social workers, nurses, police were all saying we didn't want to be called racist, so we didn't blow the whistle on it. So for this cop to reach back in for that weapon and say, you're just racist, I feel he is out of sync with the times. I don't think he'll be able to shut people up anymore. I don't think it's working as much anymore. At least I hope not. What's it like there right now? I see a couple of people behind you. What's it like on the streets? Perhaps your cameraman can sort of pan around a little bit. Is there anything going on there now?
There's a few people stand up. Very, very few. There's not a lot of people. There's a police presence. We think there's an undercover police vehicle, but we could be wrong about that. But yeah, there's a police presence around us. Police presence. But there's nobody causing any trouble. It's very relaxed. And the thing is, I mean, last night, Ezra, this was. I'll send you the footage once we get off this. This was pretty much a war zone. It was extremely kinetic. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. I want to ask you one last thing, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us in North America. We're very interested in what happens in Ireland and the UK because I think you're further down the road than we are, so I want to learn from you. But I want to clarify something you said a little bit earlier, if you could clarify it for me. I think you said that the local police sort of stood back for a bit while these local lads, maybe 20 of them, you said there were thousands who marched peacefully, soberly, solemnly. But you said that there was about 20 youths, I think you said they were covering their faces, that were getting kinetic. And I think you said that the local cops stood back. Can you explain for me, did they stand back to let the vigilante justice go? Did they stand back because they were afraid of a physical altercation? What is your theory about why the police stood back until the other riot police came?
I mean, when I say there's 20 or 30 lads involved in kinetic activity, there was a crowd of probably, I'm guessing, 300-400 on the street, and there was 10 police officers. So they really couldn't do anything but stand by. If they'd have got involved physically, there would have been, I think it was a proper policing decision to not intervene, because I think they would have caused themselves massive problems. When the riot squad came in, they did what they did. To be honest with you, they weren't actually that aggressive for a riot squad. I've seen cops in London be a lot more aggressive than these guys were in Ballymena last night. So it wasn't a very violent response from the police, but they did clear the streets. They did do what they could to bring back order. And again, once they'd done that, we left the area. But I think there is something I want to say, Ezra, before you go, because I think it's really important in relation to what you were doing last week in Cork and what's been happening in Northern Ireland. Again, nobody will know this outside of Northern Ireland, because again, it doesn't fit the narrative. But what we've had actually since Tommy was in prison in 2018, we've had unionists and Republicans standing together. It doesn't happen all the time. It's happened probably half a dozen times since 2018, since Tommy was in prison. The first time we did it was at a Free Tommy demo in Belfast. And we had people with Irish tricklets, red hand of Ulster, which is the Ulster flag, and Union Jacks standing together. So you've got nationalists who are proud Irishmen, as the people that you were standing with on Saturday were in Cork, and unionists and loyalists standing shoulder to shoulder, because they realise it's a far bigger game to be played here, and there's a far bigger fight to be fought. And that has been an amazing thing. I believe you me, the powers that be don't like it. The sinister groups that want to foster sectarian hatred and bitterness don't like it. But that's what's really happening on the ground in Northern Ireland. You've got groups of Protestant and Catholics coming together and saying, we can't have our country and our culture, even though our cultures are quite diverse, we can't have our country and our culture destroyed by mass, unchecked, illegal migration. And the problem that we got with a lot of these people, the migrants that come here to be doctors and lawyers, very small number, there's never any problem out of those people. The problem that we've got is illegal migration, and people come to this country, we don't know who they are, we don't know what their past is, and of course, they naturally gravitate to criminality because they can't work in the proper economy. So that's what the problem is that we're facing. It's certainly in Northern Ireland, I think very much in the Republic of Ireland as well. And again, just the numbers are staggering. And the whole nation is, I believe, like a tinderbox. When I talk about the nation, I'm talking about Ireland and the UK. It's like a tinderbox at the moment. And hopefully, with what we're doing with Unite the Kingdom and the other stuff like this, where we're talking about it and we're talking about it openly that people can get on YouTube, we'll do something to damp down any rage and damp down any anger. But, my fear is it only takes one more Ariana Grande or one more Southport massacre, and we're in for a world of pain. And that's my biggest fear, is it?
Wow. I do want to ask you one last question, because I think of politics, and I'm frustrated that the people are ready for change, but the politicians are not. I feel that way in Ireland very acutely. But let me draw your attention to the by-election in the Northern English riding of Runcorn, where the Labour Party had won that district with 53% just a year ago. And Reform took it. It was quite narrow, but Reform took it. And I was there and I saw their campaign. Their slogan, Richard, was freeze immigration, stop the boats. Like, it couldn't have been more blunt. And that was enough to completely flip Runcorn, which was this they said it was the 16th safest Labour riding in the whole country. It flipped on this issue. What's the politics like in Northern Ireland? I don't know that part of the country. Are there any politicians? Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, I cut across there. Yeah, there are politicians that are taking a stand on this. The TUV, which has its real heartland, funny enough, in Ballymena, the local MP I've spoken to Jim Allister about these issues. He gets it. He understands and he knows what needs to be done. The problem we've got in Northern Ireland, we're a very small voice in a big chamber. So Jim's the only TUV MP in Parliament, and it's a Parliament, 600 or so MPs. But Jim is doing what he can. My local MP, Alex Easton, sings from the same hymn sheet as Jim Allister. So we do have a small number of MPs that get it. And obviously the Reform guys, some of them get it, some of them don't. And that's all I'm going to say about Reform. But there really is a massive opening there for an insurgent party. But I think, again, with the politics, Ezra, I think what has to happen with the politics, and this is really important, and it's really important people, I guess, in North America understand this as well. The politics in the United Kingdom has to welcome in Tommy Robinson and the United Kingdom movement and the people that are associated with that, which includes you, obviously, Ezra. Because if we're excluded, which Reform has excluded us, they've said, they called us that lot, they won't allow Tommy to join the party and so on and so forth. So I think there has to be a sea change there. Because I believe if we all came together on the right, Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe, Nigel, some of the right-wing Tories, UKIP, Nick Tenconi's doing a great job at UKIP, Tommy Robinson, all of us lot, we would absolutely romp the next election. And I think Nigel doesn't get that yet. And what my prayer and hope is that Nigel will get that and that he'll bring this together and he'll be a great leader instead of someone that could have been a great leader. I hope that makes sense.
Well, what I saw from social media clips of the mothers walking last night is mothers who don't care about any other issue in the world other than the safety of their girls. Nothing else is as important, not even traditional fault lines of Catholic or Protestant. When a child is raped, everything changes, and that's just so shocking. Richard, thank you for answering my call today to give us an on-the-ground report. I will gratefully take your footage and will credit you for it. Thank you. I want to show people what's going on, and hopefully this will lead to more justice and more political attention rather than people just name calling like that senior police officer. Thanks for your time, Richard.
Thanks, Ezra. Thanks very much. Thank you.
All right, there he is, Richard Inman. Friend of mine I've gotten to know through Tommy Robinson and a reporter for Urban Scoop. Stay with us. Your letters to me next. Well, that's Richard Inman, and after I spoke with him, new footage came out of Northern Ireland showing that the troubles are spreading all across the 6 counties, and I think it's really captured the imagination of people in Northern Ireland in a terrible way. What happened, this targeting of Northern Irish girls for rape by migrants, I think has shocked the community, and the response by the police to call everyone racist, I think that's going to bring even more riots tonight. Here's some footage of that. Stay with us. Your letters to me are next. Hey, welcome back. Your letters to me. Mark Lawley says, as an Englishman, I adore the Irish culture. Please don't become an Islamic culture. Yeah, listen, I'm not an expert in Ireland or the UK, although I am a lover of both countries. And I'm sort of an amateur admirer of both countries. So I know I'm getting some things wrong. I'm certain of it. It's a complex history. It's a history of Christianity in the West as well. Catholicism, Protestantism, civil wars, plantations, rebellions. I don't know all that history, and I confess it to you. I'm learning it as I go. But I think the Irish fighting spirit is what makes them so interesting and makes it so different. They're being hit harder with mass immigration proportionately than we are, but they're fighting back proportionately more than anyone else I've ever seen. Bruce Atchison commented, leftists decry the invasion of the Americas, yet they support the replacement of Ireland's indigenous people by foreigners. Worse yet, these people being brought in won't assimilate and adopt Irish values. They have no loyalty to their host country, and they look down on those who kindly let them in and give them welfare. Ingrates should be sent packing. One of the interesting things I'm seeing in Los Angeles and other parts of the U.S. as they riot against mass deportations is something that Stephen Miller, who's the senior advisor to Donald Trump, says, is do you have an obligation to accept hostile migration? So not just illegal migration or violent or criminal migration, But how about people who just hate you? Do you have an obligation as a country to take someone who hates you? They haven't committed a crime. They've applied and got in. I'm not even saying they've sneaked in. Do you have to take someone who's hostile? Stephen Miller says, obviously not. I think that's a shocking thing to put it so bluntly, but I think he's right. And so how many people have we let into Canada who actually hate the place? Just ask them. Last letter from Alex Greer, who says, I am from a Northern Ireland Protestant Unionist background. I have thought that I would support a demonstration with the Republican tricolor. Well, that's what Richard Inman said tonight. I don't know if you understood what he was saying, is in Northern Ireland, where they have sectarian divisions, where they used to have the Troubles that were quite violent until just a generation ago, he said Protestants and Catholics were standing together against this greater foreign threat. And I think he's right. I don't know. Ireland is quite an interesting place. I have never gone in my life until just last year. But that tiny country is a crucible of so many things, and maybe some sort of a role model for citizens standing up and showing their pride in their country. I don't know if we can do that anymore in Canada because, as I mentioned in my monologue, Irish, it's an ethnicity. It's a historic people. Canada has some of that, yes, but I don't know if we think of ourselves that way. The Irish are the Indigenous people of Ireland. And Canada definitely does have a culture and an identity and a root into the land, and we have a shared history and a language. But that's been watered down over the last 10 or 20 years. Is there enough Canadianness left? Well, I guess we'll find out. That's our show for today. Until tomorrow, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night, and keep fighting for freedom.